Thanks, Vince. Yeah, this screenshot shows a little bit about me. Vince and I did do a presentation at VMworld this year together, and that went really good about SaltStack Config and Microsoft Windows. I've done some PowerBlock and some vMug presentations. If you want to know what I'm working on, always go out and check out my blog, www.vcrocs.info. And anytime I do updates to the blog, I usually put it out on Twitter. So if you want to go out to Twitter and follow me, that'll keep you up to date with what I'm working on. So I didn't start using SaltStack until August of this year. I wanted to take a look at it since it became part of the vRealize suite. I wanted to use it as an enhancement with everything we were doing with vRealize automation. We're doing all our server builds and a lot of day 2 operations with VRA, and I wanted to see how we could make things better using SaltStack Config. So here's a quick outline of my journey, and that's what this presentation's about. I first started looking at, how do you add minions to the SaltStack to the master. And then after that, I just wanted to learn about all the built-in functions. Test ping, is a really good one to understand how things work. And then with installing the minions, I started out doing it manually. Then I wanted to automate it. And then after I started understanding how the functions worked, it's like, well, how do you run these functions against all your minions, which are your servers? And that's where I spent a lot of time targeting, and I have a couple demos to show you how we're targeting. And then looking at the beacons and the reactors, if you have a Windows service that you always want to have it be stopped, how you can react to that if somebody starts it up that shouldn't. And then after I started understanding that is where I then started adding it to our VRA server builds. And everything I'm doing with SaltStack Config as a Windows admin, I'm doing it with PowerShell. You don't see very many demos on how to do that, so I have some examples at the end of a PowerShell module that I started working on, and all the functions that I'm creating to make changes with Salt. So hope you enjoy what we're going to show today. As a Windows admin, I help you get started. So we're going to start out by installing minions. The first way I'm going to show with Windows is how I started. I just wanted to understand how it works, so I went and copied the install file down to the server, and I manually did the install in one or two, and then after that I'm like, yeah, I need to automate this. So the reason I want to show how you would manually install the Minion is so that when you do the automation side, you know which questions to ask. So like right here, you can see when you're starting to, you need to put in, the IP of the master or the name, and then what you want the Minion to be called. Now through code, I'm doing that exact same process, which is why I showed how to do it manually. So since I live in a zero trust environment, I am using VMware tools to talk to my server and using PowerShell. So copy VM guest file goes through VMware tools, and when I do invoke VM script, it's using tools. So if you notice, I did a /s to be silent. I've specified the master and the Minion name, and that's based on the variable that I have set. So if we go ahead and run that, if you watch the bottom of the screen, you can see that it's copying the install file down to the Minion. And as soon as that copy is done, it's going to then kick off the install, and the install is complete. If we go out and do a refresh. Now I installed an older version on purpose because I also want to show how easy it is to upgrade minions. So the install file I installed was 2019. Now to upgrade the Minion, and this I'm going to show how to upgrade the Minion, but this could be any piece of software that you have. So I have a couple jobs set up to do that. So you can see it's 2019 now, and I want to go up to 3003. So it's, yeah, 2019. So a couple jobs I have. The first thing I do there, again, because I have is NSX-T zero trust, is I copy the file from the Salt master to the Minion. So if you see, it says cp.get file, which is the function to copy. You give it the source, which is my Salt server, and that's where I'm going to copy it to the Minion. The next job is going to do the upgrade. So just like in my first script I showed, if you specify the exe file and do a /s, which is silent, it'll kick off that install and complete silently. And then when I'm done, I want to go out and delete the file. So I have I'm using the function file.remove to clean up, because I'm only doing this to one Minion. You know, you could do this to, 10, 100, 1,000 at the same time if you really want to, and that's where the true power of SaltStack comes in, is the way that you can run these jobs against so many servers at the same time. So let's go out and look at the job. To the right where you see GID, it's job ID, the JID. If we go out and do a refresh, you can see the job completed. So it copied the file down to the Minion. So if we go out and do a refresh, there's the file. So now to do the install, we're just going to run it against the same Minion. Go pick the job. And if you go and look at the in progress under activity, it's a good way to see when the job is done. So if you go under job info, there you can see that it's done, and then it's at the same version. So it's very quick and easy to upgrade your Minions. Some people have asked, why do I do it this way? And like I said earlier, it's because of, our servers can't just reach out to other ones in the zero trust. We try to keep, the ports, limit the ports, limit the servers that they can actually get to. So I've been trying to do my jobs and functions in a way that I don't have to ask to open up extra ports. So now we're going to just go out and clean up that file, just do a quick delete. Go out and look to see how the progress is. You can see it's done. So if we go out and look at the server, the file should be gone, and it is. So the next thing I wanted to do was auto accept my Minions, and in order to do that, you set up a reactor. And then what the reactor does is it looks for an event to show up in the event buzz under salt/auth as the event, and then it runs my state file called accept key. So if we go and look at the accept key, I didn't want to just accept any servers, so I did set some criteria. If the status is pending, or the state of it is pending, and it starts with a certain strings, I will auto accept that into my environment, because normally it goes into the pending mode first, and then you have to manually accept those. And by doing the auto accept, it makes it for like when I'm doing my VRA builds, that'll automatically get accepted, and then I can start running jobs against these new servers through some of the function or some of the jobs that I have set up. Next thing we're going to talk about is how to react very quickly to zero-day threats. When I first started looking at SaltStack was in August, and I don't know if anybody remembers as a Windows admin that there was a 0-day threat with the print spooler. And one of the recommendations was just to go out and just stop that service on all your Windows servers. So when I started looking at the SaltStack, I'm like, alright, how can I create some jobs to do that? So I did set up a couple jobs we're going to show you. And what I want to show is how you can do it using PowerShell or the built-in functions. Because you could do it either way. If you have a lot of, as a Windows admin, PowerShell knowledge, here you can see to disable it. There's a one-liner. You can use the function command.run, set your PowerShell command, and then say shell equals PowerShell as an argument, and you can stop services. Or that's actually to disable services. I've been trying to use the built-in functions as much as possible, so if you do service.disable, send it the argument, which is the service name, which is spooler, does the exact same thing. So it's the same thing for starting. Service.start, send it to spooler, the service name, which is spooler, and you can start services. And this is, now if you want to do them both at the same time, that's where you can start getting into writing scripts. So you do command.script, show it the path, give it the path to your script, shell is PowerShell, and that is stored in the files server on the master. So if you look at the path, then it says that it was spooler. So it's the same two commands that I showed, but I just stuck them in, put them into a script. That way that you can do both steps at the same time. You can stop it and disable. So then using PowerShell to stop the service or the function. Command.run, give it this, the command, and then the functions. Like I say, I've been trying to use the functions as much as I can, and when I learn how they work, it's like service.stop, pass it the argument, and the job will run. So let's run those jobs, show you how it works. You can see right now it's currently running and it's set to automatically start. So if we want to use the built-in function, let's go stop that service. Go pick that server name. Go look at the progress. Go pick on the job ID. You can see it stopped. It's still set to automatic, so if it restarted, if the server restarted, the job would start back up. So let's go and disable that. And I'm showing the steps, to do one step at a time, and that it's a good way to learn how the system works. You can start combining these jobs, and we will get into that. So let's make it that it's started again. So now if we're going to go run it, let's do them both at the same time with the script that I showed. So now if we go and run it, the script will stop it and disable it all in one job. So now if we go and do a refresh on the services, it's disabled and stopped. Now the same way I'm showing to stop and disable if you wanted to start services. And it could be any service that's on the system. I'm showing for the spooler, but it could be, SQL, IIS, could be anything that you have out there. Do a refresh, there it's running. And what's nice about this is, you know, you can use this as remote management to get in and make changes. So now that we had some jobs to manually go and stop services, how do you make sure they stay stopped? And that's where beacons and reactors come in. So on your Minion, you can have a beacon file that will monitor the spooler service. And if the spooler service status would change, so to get that file down to, we're going to, like I did some of the other stuff, we're going to use the function, copy the file. There's the beacon file, and there's where it goes on to the Minion. And then after, if we'd ever want to delete the beacon file, I also have a job set up to do that. And then anytime you make changes to a beacon file on a Minion, you have to restart the service, and the service is Salt Minion. So I have a job to do that. So to show you how this works, let's just copy the file down to the Minion. Show you what it looks like. So you can see it's beacons, it's doing the service, and then these are the services that I'm monitoring. So spooler says on change only, so it'll never send an event back unless it's changed. Like if it's stopped and it started, that's a change. Or if it's, you know, something that you want to make sure stays running, if it's currently running and stopped, it would only send an event on that change. So we copy the file down, and it does need to go in a very specific folder. So if you go and look, there's that same file that was on the server, the Salt server. So now let's go restart the service. So on restart, it'll pick up that beacon, and then it'll start monitoring the spooler service. So right now you can see I want it to be stopped. So let's say somebody logged in that didn't know it needs to stay stopped, and they're like, hey, I want to start this up. So they set it to automatic, and they right mouse click, and they start it up because they think that it should be running. But security says otherwise. So if you notice, without doing anything, the beacon seen that change. The reactor ran a state file that says I'm going to go stop that service. And no matter how many times they try, they're not going to be able to start it. So if we go and look at the reactor, it's looking for the service spooler, and then there's the state file that I'm going to run. So that's the event it was looking for, you know, salt beacon service spooler. And if we go and look at the spooler auto stop state file, it says stop service. You know, if spooler is running, if it's true, I'm going to go and stop the service. And there's just the argument is spooler. Now you could do the opposite too. I have it all commented out just to show you that if it's set to be stopped, you could go and start it up right away. So as a Windows Server admin, now let's look at some Windows Registry management, because at some point you're always going to have to make changes to the registry, whether it's for security reasons or application, all kinds of things that you may have to do. So I set up some jobs, one to create a registry entry and one to update. And I'm using it, showing it using PowerShell. So just like all my other jobs, you know, it's command.script. I have some scripts out there. And then you always need to say shell as PowerShell as part of the arguments. So let's go out and look at those scripts. I do have them under the file server. So if we go and look at to create it, I'm going to create a registry key that says VRA build equals true. And then to show you how you can update it, I'm going to change that value to no. I mean, that's some very, very common changes that you may do, you know, changing ones to zeros or changing values. So if we go out and look at the registry, it's currently not there. So now let's run that job. We're going to create that registry key. And within the SaltStack config, when you run the jobs to update the status, you do have to refresh, and you can see that it completed. And if we go out and do a refresh on the registry, you can see that key now showed up. VRA build is equal to yes. Very simple. Some quick and easy jobs that you can create. Now let's go out and change that yes to a no. We're going to edit, update. Go out and look at the in progress. Go up and do a refresh. Job ran, completed successfully, it's returned. Go out and do a refresh on the registry key. And now you can see that the value is no. And like I keep saying, you could run that against, you know, 100 servers at the same time, or all your servers in your environment. That's where the true power of Salt comes in. So now we were running everything manually. Let's show how to schedule jobs to run. Say somebody comes to you and they say, hey, I want to reboot all my test servers to, you know, on a certain night at a certain time. So you can create schedules. So let's do a reboot, and I have a job set up to reboot all my Windows servers. Now your target, I'm going to do my test servers. I'm going to run it one time. And it could be reoccurring, could be whatever you choose. So let's set this to reboot on the night of the SALT conference. November 4th is when my presentation is, and we'll reboot it at about 11 o'clock. Set that. So on Thursday, November 4th at 11 o'clock, all my test Windows servers are going to reboot. The next item we're going to look at is adding grain information so that you can target your minions very easily. So if you look at all my minions that I have in my environment, if we go and edit that, you can see where it says grain ID, and then I was very specific of which one I wanted to see. But you can also say grain. You can see there I'm using two different criteria, FQDN and then also OS full name. I've spent a lot of time doing the targets. So here I created a CSV file from vCenter because I want to add the vCenter tags as grain information. So you can see each VM was listed there and all the tags that are associated with it in vCenter. So I have a state file that is doing orchestration to add that information to the minions, and you can see the first step is going to copy the file down using the function cpget. And then I'm going to run the script that'll actually pull the information out of that CSV file, and then I sync the grain information, and then at the very end I'll remove the file because it's no longer needed on the minion. So let's go and look. You can see that the grains file is not on the VM yet. So if we go and run that job, which is going to do the orchestration, when you do orchestration jobs, each step within that orchestration does show up as a separate job. So you can see cp get file was listed, the command script, the syncing the grains. I really like that part about the orchestration, that you can see how each step completed, and then the last step showed up now as deleting the file. So you can see the grains file is there, and it lists vCenter tags and then all the tags that are associated with that minion. And I did clean up that CSV file when it was done running. So if we go and look at that, you can see now the grain vCenter tag shows up, and then in this example, all the tags are on the same line. So let's go create a target based on one of the tag names. So if you create target, it's going to be vCenter tags. And if you specify the tag, if you put an asterisk before and after, it's like a wildcard. That way it can be anywhere within that string of tags. So then when we go and look, it'll filter, it'll create your targets based on the vCenter tag that you specify. We use vCenter tags a lot, and to have that as grain information makes it very nice way to target it. I'm going to do the same thing, but this time, instead of using PowerShell to pull the information out of a CSV file, I'm going to use the built-in functions of Salt. So if you notice, I took the old grain information away. And here I have a script that goes through. It's using PowerShell, and I'm specifying the VM. I'm going to go get the VM name. I'm going to get all the tags that are associated with it. But I'm going to use the salt function grains.append on this example. I really like how it formats the grains file when you use the built-in function. So after you run that, you can see each vCenter tag is then on its own line within the grains file. And then when you go and look at the grains information, you can see each tag is then separated. And I kind of like doing that better. I wanted to show the first one as a way to show how you can do the orchestration, and that there's always two ways to do everything. So in this example, to create the target, now when I pick the key to be vCenter tag, you can see now that each tag, vCenter tag, shows up in the drop-down as being a separate choice. I kind of like the way that works a little bit better. But both ways that I showed are fine, and it's whatever works best in your environment. Here you can see in the job when it ran the return value, you can see that it showed the vCenter tags. It's a good way to check to make sure that everything's working correct, to go look at your jobs. And you can see that I'm doing a sync then afterwards. And the other thing as a Windows admin is you might want to do is show Active Directory OUs as grain information. So here's a PowerShell script that I have that it goes out and it connects to the SaltStack Config server. And that's what the first couple lines here are doing. It's creating an SSH session to the server. I save all the passwords in Hashy Vault, and I actually have a little function that will go out and grab the password. And then to get a list of all the minions that are currently in SaltStack Config, I do a salt run manage up, and that returns a list of every minion that you have. And then after I get the list of minions, I created this script as like a way, like maybe one time a week you would run this. So the first thing I'm doing there is I'm deleting the old key, Active Directory key information. So grains.delete key removes it from the grains file, and then I'll go and do a sync. And then now this is where I'm reaching out into Active Directory. I'm pulling in the OUs that minion is part of, and then I'm doing grains.append, and there's the key information and then the value of the OU. And then after I add all the OUs as grain information, then I do another grain sync, so that way it goes in. When I go and look at the information, it shows it right away. So you can see the key ADOU shows up, and then there's all the different options. So if I wanted to show all my every minion that's in the prod OU, you can then create a target based on that, which I find to be very, very helpful. And the next thing for grain information is we also have NSX-T. So NSX-T has tags. So if somebody would come to us and say, hey, I want to run, this process based on the NSX-T tags. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm connecting to the NSX-T manager through the API. Getting my password out of the Hashy Vault. Making the connection to the SaltStack Config server to run my SSH commands, and you can see there I'm specifying only one VM, but it could be, if you'd say it's an asterisk, it would actually pull back for everything. And then for each VM, I loop through and get the tag information. And you can see the same command, grains.append. I'm using the key NSX security tags. If there isn't any, I want to put the word none. And then if there are NSX tags associated with that minion, I do then put the current NSX tag. I append that, and then I do a grain sync, and then disconnect. So if we go and look at the jobs that completed, you can see there I appended the job. And the key, and then the value we go up to the minion, if we create a target, you'll see the NSX-T tag as a key, and then those are all the tags that are an option to use. So then when you click on that target that you just created, you'll only see the minions based on NSX-T tags. And there you can see the tags are listed. Active Directory tags. It's just a really nice way to be able to create all your targets. Because you can write the best state file, you know, all these really cool jobs, but if you don't have a way to go and target all your minions, what good are they? The last thing I'm going to show, you know, I was calling a lot of functions, so I'm actually working on creating like a SaltStack Config PowerShell module. Right now it's just a PS1 file, which is a regular PowerShell file that I call, and it brings all the functions into my scripts. But you can see I'm creating functions, you know, here's one to disconnect, the previous one was to connect, and I'm trying to use the same naming conventions like you would see in PowerShell, you know. So like, and then also make it the same as what the function is and the name is in Salt. Because the Salt command is cp.get file, and you can see that I invoked and I try to use the same name. And if you when you create these functions, it just makes it nice so that when I'm writing scripts that it makes less code in my scripts, my automation scripts, and then I just call these functions, and I just design the functions in a way that, you know, I can just keep reusing them, you know, to get the service status. And I do use the output to JSON a lot, because with PowerShell it makes it very easy to go through the results that you get back from Salt, and then just pull out the information that you want. So like that one there, you can see if the result is true, I actually want to see the word running or the word stopped if it's not true, instead of just true or false. You know, if I want to stop a service.stop, send it to service name, and output it as JSON. If I want to disable the service, same thing. Then I just need to pass it the minion name and then the service name. And there's an example of how you would put that into your PowerShell code. You know, to get the OS version, in this example, you know, my function is reaching into the registry. I've always found that the most accurate way to get which version of the OS is to look at that location in the registry. And then I go through the results, pull out which line I know is the OS version, and that's what I return. And here's the one for grains.append that I kept showing. You know, hopefully this gives people watching this that are interested in PowerShell as Windows Server admins to see how easy it could be to work with SaltStack Config, use existing PowerShell scripts that you already have in your environment, and just go write some functions that you're going to use a lot and start making your own module. So thank you for attending this session. Hope you found it helpful as a Windows admin. Like I said throughout this demonstration or my presentation is, the true power for me with SaltStack Config is the way that I can run these jobs against many servers at the same time, and it just makes things a lot faster. And the learning curve, I've never used a config manager before, so I just started in July. So like I said, within a month's time, just working on it part time, I became very comfortable with it, and hopefully you'll find this useful to help you get started. And if you want to see what I'm working on, just reach out to my blog every now and then. I do write some updates, and then follow me on Twitter. Sometimes I'll put when I'm writing the updates on Twitter. So thank you for attending.